If you're thinking of buying a Microsoft Dynamics 365 system, maybe the CRM, Customer Relationship Management System, maybe one of the others, there are some things you should be very clear about before you sign up. My experience of several Dynamics implementations has revealed some expensive surprises that I'm sure you would like to avoid. Hopefully, by asking these questions up front, you can protect yourself against such surprises and save your organisation a lot of money. I'll go through the questions in order of impact. Highest impact first. Here's the list. 1. How much will ongoing disk usage charges be? Typically £100,000 a year. 2. How long will it take to migrate my data into Dynamics? Typically months. 3. How will you reconcile the migrated data with the data from the existing system? 4. Does Dynamics support UK Direct Debit processing? 5. Does Dynamics support UK gift aid? 6. Does Dynamics support UK address entry and validation by postcode or by any part of the address? 7. How long will it take to customise Dynamics to our needs? And how much will it cost? Can you guarantee this? 8. Can you provide reference sites with similar scale to ours? 9. I want to copy data from the operational Dynamics system into our data warehouse. How will we do this? Are there additional costs? 10. Will you build automated tests to ensure the quality of each release of the system? 11. We've heard that Dynamics has a lot of data tables and fields that will not be used. Will you provide a data dictionary of all the tables and fields that are used? And will you prune the system to remove unused objects? 12. Are there any limitations in Dynamics 365? If so, what are they? The answers to many of these questions depend on the size and complexity of your organisation. Here's a table to help classify your system roughly. Your organisation may span more than one column. It's a very rough guide to classifying a wide range of organisations. It is intended to enable us to illustrate actual costs and timescales that will be meaningful to you. Question 1. How much will disk usage charges be? Typically £100,000 per year. Is £100,000 per year a big number? Well, suppose your organisation is what I've called medium-sized. If so, you probably have a database of around 50 gigabytes. If your system ran on a commercially available high-quality database service, that would be provided with 100 gigabytes of disk space for £1,000 a year. This would include the CPU processing, 4 gigabytes of RAM, operating system, database, regular backups and support. So the disk space is only a part of this. If you allocated all these costs to the disk, it would be 83 pence per gigabyte per month. So obviously the disk cost is less than 83 pence per gigabyte per month. If you bought a subscription to a Microsoft Azure service with premium SSD, that's the top-rated solid-state disk, the disk space would cost you 15 pence per gigabyte per month. That's reasonable. If you buy Dynamics, then you pay at least £1.50 per gigabyte per month for files and for log files, and over £20 per gigabyte per month for disk space in Dataverse, which is Microsoft's ill-conceived sort of database which is used by Dynamics. So your 50 gigabyte database would cost £12,000 a year, right? No, unfortunately. When you store your 50 gigabytes of data in Dataverse, it gets bloated by at least tenfold. So you end up with 500 gigabytes costing you £120,000 per year, Remember, you could store your data very successfully and safely in a reliable, high-performance, functionally rich database for less than £1,000 a year. Do you want to waste over £100,000 a year? This is not the highest element of cost for a dynamic system. I list it as the highest impact because it usually comes as a shock months after you have made the decision to go with Dynamics. It is an unexpected and entirely unjustified cost. So ask the question before you commit. Question 2. How long will it take to migrate my data into Dynamics? The answer to this question is another thing that generally comes as a shock and has a serious negative impact on organisations. For a medium-sized organisation where I worked, to migrate their 50 gigabyte database with 270 million records was going to take 150 days. That's 5 months. The implementation partner, a Microsoft Gold partner, said that they could migrate 1.8 million records in 24 hours, and their estimate proved accurate. Think about the difficulties of managing your data between the old and the new systems over a period of months. Ask the supplier how they would suggest doing this. Outside Dynamics, we were able to migrate all this data every night in a few hours to our data warehouse, illustrating the enormous inefficiency of Dynamics. The organisation I mentioned decided to proceed, but with a tiny fraction of its data, losing the ability to perform long-term trend analysis and making it impossible to deal with supporters' inquiries on historical data. Question 3. How will you reconcile the migrated data with the data from the existing system? The answer we got to this question from a senior manager in a multi-billion-dollar consultancy was, we'll eyeball a few records. If you are migrating a few 100 million records, the probability of finding an error or omission that affects, say, 100,000 records by eyeballing a few records is tiny. Such errors would go unnoticed until sometime later, when they will be much harder to fix. I have seen this happen in several cases with Microsoft Dynamics systems. Proper reconciliation is absolutely possible. When we migrated 270 million records every night into our data warehouse, we ran a series of reconciliation steps between the source and the target systems to ensure key metrics such as the numbers of records migrated, the total value of all monetary fields. If you lose just one record, it won't add up. Minimum and maximum values in the most important fields in each table. A record-by-record reconciliation would not have been feasible, but checking many key metrics did uncover errors during our testing phase and gave us justified confidence in our live daily migrations. The suggestion to eyeball a few records for a live migration was staggeringly unprofessional. Question 4. Does Dynamics support UK Direct Debit processing? The answer is that Dynamics does not support UK Direct Debit processing, but some of the UK implementation partners have built extensions for the UK market. If your bidder has done this, also ask which processing company or companies they support. I worked with a charity that met considerable resistance to supporting their chosen payment processing company. If the implementation partner has not already built direct debit processing, be very wary. You don't want to be the company that pays to cover their development costs and suffers the teething troubles that they will run into. If direct debits are the lifeblood of your organisation, don't trust a supplier that does not have a good track record in this area. Question 5. Does Dynamics support UK gift aid? As with direct debit processing, the short answer is no. If your organisation is a UK charity, you will want to collect gift aid. Your implementation partner may have built extensions for GiftAid before. If so, ask to talk to a reference site and see how it worked out for them. If not, then be very wary. GiftAid is not hugely complicated, but it does need to be done correctly. Those donors who are registered for GiftAid enable the charity to claim 25% of the donation value from the UK government. Not all donors register for GiftAid, but it is not unusual for GiftAid to boost a charity's income by 15% overall, so you want it to work. Question 6. Does Dynamics support UK address entry and validation by postcode or by any part of the address? Again, the answer is no. And again, some implementation partners have built extensions to support this kind of address processing. In the UK, we are used to entering addresses simply by typing in the postcode or some other part of the address and then selecting the correct value from a short list. This saves typing and improves data quality. There are many low-cost, efficient and reliable solutions available, so there is no reason not to do this. Question 7. How long will it take to customize Dynamics to our needs? Can you guarantee this? Realistically, no implementation partner can answer this without knowing a lot about your system. But typically, for a medium-sized organisation, it will cost over £1 million and take many months. The reasonable approach is to analyse what you need. Implementation partners call this part of the process discovery, and they typically plan to do it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is nowhere near enough. They usually crash into development and keep on discovering throughout the project. As a result, costs increase. The initial quote is a minimum and you will not get a working system for that. All implementation partners I have seen claim to work in an agile way, but they do not follow the agile development principles, and they do use some esoteric terminology and tools that are unique to Microsoft. The end result gives agile an undeserved bad name. Also, your own staff will be expected to do a huge amount of the work, including testing over the whole project. This is a hidden cost which you should allow for. Working alongside most of the Microsoft implementation partners is demoralizing, so expect some of your best people to leave. Question 8. Can you provide reference sites with similar scale to ours? In a recent webinar by Microsoft's Tech for Social Impact group, the example customer had 600 clients per year, and he was happy. My guess is that they could not find a larger happy customer in the UK. I know of 5 charities that have suffered significantly increased costs and delays. The most successful one, but still not without pain, was small by my classification, the others were medium. One of them had to abandon the project when its delivery time and costs both increased by over 150%. That's 150% increase. They wrote off over £1 million. If you do a reference visit, ask difficult questions. Hopefully these 12 questions will help you. And please take note of the answers. I know of a charity that found some interesting things from a reference visit, including the old system being shut down 7 weeks before the new system started to be available, and GiftAid not working 3 months after go live. The charity asking the questions decided to proceed with Microsoft Dynamics 365 anyway. I could not understand why. They are now running 9 months late, they have lost most of their technical staff, and I don't know how much their costs have increased, but when I was there they had already run into the disk usage cost issue, which is the subject of my first question. Question 9. I want to copy data from the operational Dynamics system into our data warehouse. How will we do this? Are there additional costs? This diagram is the proposal produced by the Microsoft Gold partner at one charity that I was working with. Ada was the name for the Microsoft Dynamics system. Elephant SQL was the name of the supplier of our PostgreSQL database service. Azure Data Lake, Azure Synapse and Serverless SQL Pool were extra Microsoft products which they said we needed to copy data to the data warehouse. They also proposed 1 terabyte of storage for the Serverless SQL Pool. All this cost and complexity was completely unnecessary. They described Azure Data Lake as a repository of CSV files. CSV files are comma-separated variables, simple lists of records with the fields separated by commas. PostgreSQL, like several other databases, has a single command to copy a CSV file into a database table. The CSV files can temporarily be stored in the file system, so all we needed was this. It seems to me that the proposed Microsoft solution is always more complicated than it needs to be. It requires more products and increases the use of computing and storage resources. I guess that you would prefer the opposite. I certainly would. Question 10. Will you build automated tests to ensure the quality of each release of the system? The answer to this will probably be no. I did speak to one bidder who claimed to use automated testing, but I have not come across its use in any of the implementations I have seen. Automated testing is standard for most web application developers, but not for implementers of Microsoft Dynamics 365. Most automated testing tools for web applications allow you to describe sequences of user actions and the expected results. These tools mean that you can write a test once and run it every time you make a change in the application. The tool reports all the results and highlights any tests that do not pass. This works well with Agile development, since there are many software releases during implementation, and all the tests can be run easily on every release. What actually happened in implementations I have seen was that test scripts were written as text documents using Word or Excel. Then users from the customer would follow these documents, typing and clicking and recording any failures. There are many problems with this approach. Firstly, it is very labour intensive. It takes a long time for a human to read through each test and to carry out the steps and record the results. Secondly, it's a boring task because it has to be repeated after every new release, and that makes it difficult for the tester to maintain concentration. After a few releases, the tedium is just too much. The results are therefore not reliable. Scripts are not followed precisely and errors are often missed. The people given this task have other jobs to do, jobs that normally take up all their time, so fitting in this time-consuming and boring task is understandably neglected. In practice, there are often no scripts for many of the tests that need to be carried out. The delegation of testing to the users also tends to delegate blame for errors too. You signed off on this, the implementer will say, so any change now is chargeable. Automated testing is simply good practice that almost all implementers of Microsoft Dynamics 365 completely neglect. Question 11. We have heard that Dynamics has a lot of data tables and fields that will not be used. Will you provide a data dictionary of all the tables and fields that are used? And will you prune the system to remove unused objects? The answer to the data dictionary part may be yes, but it will be at extra cost. I would not be prepared to go ahead on this basis unless I could check what had been produced every day. I have seen too many data dictionaries where the information supplied stated the obvious and missed out answers to the important questions. Typical data dictionary entries would be field preferred contact method code, description code defining the preferred method of contact, field preferred contact method code name, description name of the preferred contact method code. These are useless since they just paraphrase the names of the columns. Better data dictionary entries would be preferred contact method code, a numeric code defining the supporter's preferred method of contact. These numbers are translated to meaningful text such as email, phone, text, message, etc. through the table option set metadata. For a human readable form, see preferred contact method code name. Field name, preferred contact method code name. Human readable text defining the supporter's preferred method of contact, email, phone, text message, etc. As for pruning the unwanted objects, the answer would be a firm no. About half the tables in a Dynamics 365 system will be unused. Also, in the tables that are used, about half the columns will be unused or will duplicate other columns. Since disk space for the Dataverse is massively overpriced, wasting space is just adding insult to injury. You could be forgiven for thinking that Microsoft is trying to make the Dataverse as big as possible. Question 12. Are there any limitations in Dynamics 365? If so, what are they? The Microsoft promotional video finishes with the words "no limits," so you might expect there to be no limits. Because the Dataverse is so bloated and inefficient, in practice it can manage only quite small databases. The cost also drives users to very small databases. That's a soft limit, but it's a pretty heavy soft limit. Microsoft imposes several other limits and describes them openly in its documentation. Entitlement limits represent the number of requests users are entitled to make each day. With such an expensive system, I would not expect to be told that I've run out, that I've used my quota for the day. Service protection limits ensure consistent availability and performance for everyone. We, that's Microsoft, apply some limits to how APIs are used with Dataverse. Functionality limits. Dataverse has less functionality than Microsoft SQL Server. You can use Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio to access the Dataverse, and you can issue Microsoft SQL Server commands, but many of these raise an error or produce results that are not the same as would be produced by Microsoft SQL Server. Microsoft provides a long list on its website of not supported features, but this list is not complete. SQL query limits. SQL is the language that developers use to communicate with the database. Microsoft limits you to 80 megabytes of results. That is a very small amount, and you will probably find yourself wanting to do more. Microsoft says you must buy more products to do that. Data transfer limits. If you want to copy data out of the Microsoft environment, they charge you for moving that data. It's your data. Microsoft calls this bandwidth pricing. So ask your implementer about limits. And here's a bonus question. Question 13. I have watched the Microsoft Dynamics promotional video. Will my users have to wear virtual reality headsets? Well, that is what you would reasonably expect having watched the video. But actually, Microsoft Dynamics 365 continues the tradition of form filling, Unfortunately, the form-filling user interface is not as comfortable to use as the best systems out there. You now have plenty of questions to ask. Please ask them, and please don't buy a system from someone who gives you unsatisfactory answers. You can get a good system, but not from Microsoft. I'd be wary of Salesforce too. I have heard sad stories from Salesforce users, but I don't have any direct experience of working on a Salesforce system. With these two companies, you are paying for huge marketing budgets and swanky offices in major cities around the world. Their systems cover a vast array of functions and still manage to miss some of the key things you need. They are big, closed, complex and expensive. The system you need is probably lean, open, as simple as possible and reasonably priced. Instead of Microsoft or Salesforce, a better solution would be to use a small software house with a good track record, working alongside your own technical people to deliver just what you want. I have worked on many of both sorts of systems, and the small tailored systems have always been better.